my wife's not a big comedy person, which is and so she doesn't like comedy movies.
Funny or
no, she's hilarious. The thing is, she hates comedy movies because there's peril, and she doesn't do well with peril.
I got
so
it.
she hates that people get themselves in these situations because she's like, they're being naughty or they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. She's a rule follower, she hates comedies, and I'm always like I made her watch Tommy Boy as like part of our marriage, like it had to be a thing, and she was like, I don't like this kind of comedy, and I was like, we can't be married, and that's not as far as I took it, but like it was a prerequisite. Like we didn't have a prenup, but a prerequisite for marriage was, I'm not going to marry you unless you've watched Tommy Boy. Like this has to happen. And then I'm looking at her watching it, and she's just like,
no.
And I'm like,
that's not legal.
God, just punch me in the face.
I know.
Just a shot to the gut.
You couldn't have anybody else attracted to you. So like,
this is it. This is all. I'm going to have to marry her because she's, even though she hates my movies, she's going to at least put up with me.
Podcast that flips the health and wellness industry upside down so you can be your healthiest inside and out. I'm your host, Dr. Neal Smoller, holistic pharmacist and supplement strategist. I'm joined by Mark DeCicco of RTD Fitness. Mark, what's going on, man?
What's happening, Neal?
It's holiday week, dude.
Holiday!
This is the holiday extravaganza, man.
Holiday.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, like, this episode is dead set in the middle of Hanukkah, which is awesome. Christmas is happening soon, and we're wrapping up the year, man. It's almost over, so it's time to celebrate.
Okay.
And so it's holiday week. Most people are taking it easy, so we're going to take it easy with the content, too. It's awesome for us. We're having a great time. This is awesome. We started this podcast in September, right? And so we have lots of filler episodes with Thanksgiving and Christmas and all of this. So it's awesome. So we're definitely taking it easy, almost as easy as Mark takes it all the time, right?
Well, I feel like that's an over-exaggeration of what I bring to the table. I feel like I bring a lot of. We've talked about my jazz. Boo boo bop boo bow. I bring the jazz flavor here, Neal. You're just a big old nerd, and you bring the nerd crap, and I gotta make it fun here. Otherwise, it's just you talking nerd nonsense, and nobody wants to hear it.
We actually,
I did a study and taking a study and screw off, Neal.
We have a new type of content that we're creating for my website called Nerding Out with Neal, because there are so many episodes, or like articles, I should say, that get too technical. So we're just going Nerding Out so people know to like just tune those out if they don't want to get technical.
Just don't read that nonsense.
Don't read that.
Right. Just come listen to the podcast. We dumb it down here for you.
So visit wellnessupsidedown.com for all things podcast related, and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app. Visit us on YouTube. Increase the views on my videos and stop watching Mark's videos because it hurts my ego. Give us 5-star reviews as often as you can each and every episode, because I think that we're worth the views and the hears, So today's show is the holiday extravaganza. We're going to provide little to nothing of value to you from a wellness standpoint, at least. I'm going to talk about Christmas movies. But no, I do want to talk about celebrating safely. It's actually funny because I was on Spectrum News today talking about this very topic, and so I wanted to kind of bring some of those things to the table here. And then Mark, you wanted to talk about connections, or I don't know what the hell Mark was saying. So he's got some. We're not. Don't do what you do, which is to give away the ending.
I'm not. I was not going to say exactly what I'm going to say in 20 minutes, Neal. That would be ridiculous. Why would I do such a thing?
I'm going to cut you off. So Mark, what are your top 3 Christmas movies?
Top 3 Christmas movies.
This is a big important conversation that we're having.
This is really important. So Muppet Christmas Carol is, we've talked about that, just an incredible movie, beyond what it needed to be.
Yep.
Just too good a movie.
Yep. Best Muppet movie, best Christmas movie.
Best Muppet movie, best Christmas
movie.
On the same page. It's got all the things.
That's number one for me,
Muppets Most Wanted is also there's a lot of good Muppet movies. There's a lot of great Muppet movies. Let's be clear about that.
Right.
And entertainment's an important. We can tie this in sort of because it's about like we need to have these breaks. We need to be able to separate from reality in safe and fun ways and join together.
Yeah.
So it's a nice way for me to bond with my family, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We're making this valuable for you because I do believe that we should probably cover this in another episode. But rest and such are a very important part of a balanced breakfast. So yeah, you're going to want to spend some time resting and being okay with that. That's something that yours truly has a horrible time with, and so being okay with doing nothing is something that I have to learn. And so we should definitely have an episode in 2023 about that, Marky.
It makes sense. And the thing too is like you have like statistics about how much time you spend on Reddit. And so my phone did a similar thing with me on my internet work. And it's like, God, we got to clean that up, Neal.
Yeah.
We got to spend like some real time on getting our phones down. But anyway, so
Muppet Christmas Carol.
Muppet Christmas Carol. I'm going to go with Bill Murray, all-time classic Scrooge.
Yeah, wow, that's number 2 for me.
It has to be because it's so strong.
And you have a thing for Charles Dickens, clearly.
Who doesn't love a good Dickens? And so I'm for it. I am into the Dickens. And so I really feel like that movie, it gets a lot of press and people talk about it. So it's not an underrated movie. It's certainly, people spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah.
But it can get forgotten in the shuffle, right? It's
very easy to look over. I looked it over for the first 9 years of my kids' lives.
Terrible.
When we were piling in all the Christmas movies.
Right. It's a good one. It's just an absolute classic.
It's hilarious.
It's got so many good jokes. You got Bobcat Goldthwait. I mean, it's got all the things that you would want in a movie.
So I got to meet Buster Poindexter when I was a 19-year-old DJ in Woodstock because he actually had a house here, and he came to a wedding that I was doing, and they're like, yeah, that guy was in movies. And in the 90s, I didn't watch 80s movies because that would be lame if I watched 80s movies, but now I'm like, I want to watch all the 80s movies. Those were great. And so I got to meet him, but I didn't really kind of connect the two until I started watching Scrooged regularly. And Scrooge is actually on like a super playlist for me. Like I watched that probably 6 times during the holiday season. So we've already watched it quite a bit in my house. It's so good. That end speech for me like gets me every single time because that's the thing for me about Christmas is, and that's why the Muppets shine so bright for me, is because there's a whole song about making this magic last the whole year, and the magic of all of this stuff is really about giving. It's the spirit of giving and the spirit of reaching outside of yourself and trying to make somebody else's life a little bit better, right? And so that end speech when he's emotional and he's tearing up and he's really selling it, that always to me is like it's a big hit,
It's just it's a new take on an old classic, and it's just super solid. Just such a fun. It's a fun movie. It's
silly.
It's silly. It's got all the stuff that I like in movies, and so my wife's not a big comedy person, which is and so she doesn't like comedy
not
movies.
Funny or
no, she's hilarious. The thing is, she hates comedy movies because there's peril, and she doesn't do well with peril.
I got it.
So she hates that people get themselves in these situations because she's like, they're being naughty or they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. She's a rule follower. She hates comedies, and I'm always like I made her watch Tommy Boy as like part of our marriage. Like it had to be a thing. And she was like, I don't like this kind of comedy. And I was like, we can't be married. And that's not as far as I took it, but like it was a prerequisite. Like we didn't have a prenup, but a prerequisite for marriage was, I'm not going to marry you unless you've watched Tommy Boy. Like this has to happen. And then I'm looking at her watching it, and she's just like,
no.
And I'm like,
that's not legal.
God, just punch me in the face.
I know.
Just a shot to the gut.
You couldn't have anybody else attracted to you. So like,
this
you were
is
like,
it. This is all. This is it. I'm gonna have to marry her because she's, even though she hates my movies, she's gonna at least put up with me. And so, no, it's that kind of thing where like she just doesn't like comedy, so it's hard to get her excited about it. It's a neat approach because it's like those are my favorite kinds of movies, and so it's a big disconnect for us. But she is hilarious, and so shout out to my wife for just having to live with me and put up with me on a regular basis,
sure.
and tolerate this podcastingness that we do. She's so good to me, and so. So those are my
Muppet
two.
Christmas
Muppet
Carol,
Scrooge. Those are pretty obvious ones. I'm going to go with one that you've probably never seen and is obscure, and it's going to send people for a loop here.
Human
Ready?
Centipede?
Although about the spirit of giving. Not exactly what I was going to say.
Right.
The third one I'm going to say is Auntie Mame, which my wife turned me on to. It's an old-timey 1950s Auntie Mame. And so it is centered around the holiday season. It's centered around Christmas.
Like auntie, like auntie?
Like auntie, yep. Auntie Mame. And so it's about
I'm looking it up
New York
right now,
City,
folks.
Yeah, New York City family. And so it's set in New York City in the 50s. It's a beautifully done movie. It's got all the spirit of Christmas stuff attached to it. It's a beautiful flick. If you've never seen it, it's got good comedy, a little bit of good comedy in it, but it's an absolute classic. And I had no familiarity with it whatsoever. My wife said, watch this movie with me. You're going to really like it. And I was like, this sounds stupid. The name sounds dumb. I'm not into it. we watched it. I was like, this is a really good movie. And we kind of made it like a thing that we talk about, watching every year, and we don't, but we should, because it's a very good family movie. So if you're looking for a good family movie,
wow, that's out of left field. Wow.
Yeah, you wouldn't have seen that one.
Yep. Because in my marriage, White Christmas was the one. Like,
sure.
I had never watched that movie, and I was like, that was the anti-Neal movie. Those kinds of sappy old school things.
For sure.
And I get near tears every time I watch that movie. It is such a strong, strong movie. I love that movie. And so and the kids now are checked out on it. They watched it once, but and my wife always loves singing along with the sister's song and all of that stuff. And because she has a really tight relationship with her sister. So it's really, really cute to kind of watch that whole thing. But yeah, that's really cool. I didn't think, I learned something new, folks.
That's what we're here to do. We're here to expose you to new stuff.
I'm going to tell you what my number 3 is, since we agree on 1 and 2.
Okay.
It's Elf. It's
it's so good. It's just so good.
It's they what it is. I know about Elf. What I made the realization last night when we watched it. They nail that third act.
Yeah.
That third act, when it goes from being the silly comedy, like over the top, to this insanely heartwarming movie. And I am such a sap. Again, when it comes to these things, I've watched it 100 times. I get teary every time. I can't even look at anybody in the room. It's like you're watching this movie about this stupid elf doing all this dumb stuff that it's kind of like corny jokes, what I'm saying? Like the situation he gets himself into. But then all of a sudden you're like, wait, Will Ferrell's going to be like as important to the story of Christmas as Rudolph? Like, what? Like, he's saving Christmas? It's going to be him? It's Rudolph and Will Ferrell? Like, that's awesome. And then, the other thing is, so we're 100 miles north of New York City, right? And so I spend way too much time in New York City. We go there once a month at least, and we just kind of do the street walking stuff. Not street walking.
You're a street walker.
Thing.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, so we walk the streets in New York City. And so that was totally one of those like love letters to New York City type movies.
Definitely. Anti-Mame, similar. The same idea,
that's
actually.
Cool. That's exciting.
It's cool to see New York City, like, Miracle on 34th Street should get a shout out here, because what an incredible movie. That's another love letter to New York City, right? Like, it feels so important that the city is a character in the movie, in the same way in Elf, right? It feels like it's part of the movie. You can't separate it out. And Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. It happens at Christmas. These are Christmas movies.
Yes.
And so they're about Christmas. And I love Elf from the perspective that the soul of that character is so pure and sweet. And even when he's being super ridiculous,
like with Dinklage, right?
All of it. And it's just like it's like he's there in the purest way possible. And that's what all of us kind of like, that's what the season's really about, is getting connected to that, like the magic of this season. And my daughter's around the age where she understands sort of how Christmas works. And she really holds on to the spirit of Christmas. And we've really hammered that point home, that it's not about a Santa Claus. It's not about, presents. It's this idea that we can be together and that we can care about each other in our community. And that's what this podcast is about caring for each other in your community and supporting you all on whatever journey you're on here. And so it feels like they just get it right. You're absolutely right.
And like the New York City thing, right? It's like it is really a magical place, that city. If you can get over the weed smell that's now everywhere, and the honking, it's so awesome. The other thing I noticed when I was driving through New York City, or walking through New York City the other day, was like, there was a time in New York's history between boomboxes and Bluetooth speakers when it was a lot quieter, right? So you had the 80s with all the boomboxes and everybody was rocking them in the streets. And now you have these effing Bluetooth speakers that are on all the stupid bikes that, the like little chariots that ride you around. And then people are putting them in their backpacks and they're just blasting their garbage music, driving up the street, walking up the street. And it is so obnoxious.
I'll tell you though, I have twice ridden in those chariots and they're $1 zillion, but they're worth every penny. It's such a cool way to drive through the city. It's a great way to
this guy's farts.
Well, he's farting on you. And it was like $80 when we went like a couple blocks. And we went like a couple blocks and it was like $80. And I was like, that is actual on the highway robbery. You're robbing me on an actual street. But I gotta say, man, it's a cool way to get around town. And so, the city is a special place. It smells like pee and weed, but it is a really, it's just an incredible place. And when it's done right, and you're seeing it through those lenses, like through the Christmas season, it's absolutely magical.
Yeah.
And so
we watch lots of Christmas stuff because we do Christmas in our house. We're kind of agnostic as it pertains to the specific holiday stuff. We're really more into consumerism than anything,
Who isn't?
but yeah, for us, like it starts normally a little bit before Thanksgiving, and it's normally one Christmas movie a day at least, all the way through, and we watch things multiple times, and so we always are trying to add to it so we can get some fresh stuff. And so what do you think about The Christmas Story Christmas? Did you watch that yet?
I have not. Are
you going to?
I think I will. People have said nice things about it. I'm not sure. I don't do well with forced nostalgia. So I feel like
that's how I feel.
I feel like, and this could just be, contempt before consideration. So I might just be coming down on it before I've actually seen it for no good reason, right? I'm basing this on nothing. I've not seen it. I don't want to see an old Ralphie, right? Like, I feel like Ralphie lives in our heads.
He's handsome, but
he lives in our heads as a kid. And so, like, there's something about, and Larry David talked about this when he was asked about a Seinfeld reunion, and it's like, people don't want to see you old, and so you live in the zeitgeist in the way that you were, right? So like a Friends reunion seems okay, but like they're all
Cox,
I don't know, like, do I want to see like a round Joey? Not really, you know, like Joey's like, how you doing? You know, like that
right,
because
like he would come in and he would just say the cliche stuff, and that's what I'm nervous about with this Christmas Story Christmas. So I just wanted to get your take on that from a Christmas perspective, because again, like, that movie is the Christmas movie, right? And,
absolutely.
And so, like, why do we want to just milk that for extra money? Like, that just doesn't work for me.
And I don't hate all remakes. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, Hollywood doesn't have a new idea or whatever.
Yeah,
this feels very forced.
Yeah,
and so I'm a little skeptical. I get to be that way. Now I got a question for you, Neal, because
I got actually one point that I want to say.
Neal.
I got one more point. The Christmas Story Christmas is actually the 4th or 5th sequel to Christmas Story. I don't know if you know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they did, like, there was a bunch of books, I guess, and they did movies about them that went like straight to
VHS
Hallmark Channel or whatever.
Straight to VHS. Yeah. Well, that was what I was going to ask. So that's a great segue. So this is potentially a fiery topic. So I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to give you my take, and I want to hear your take on it, Neal. Hallmark Christmas movies, are actual junk food garbage and are not good for your brain on any level. Now, I understand that some of you are maniac people with this. There are certain people out there who I know are listening who are going to be like, screw you, Mark, and that's fine. I get to have this opinion. I don't watch them, okay? I believe they're garbage, and I think if you watch them, you're an idiot. So that's my take. I'm not trying to offend anybody or make you feel bad, but like, you're probably dumb. And that's not, it's not about you being dumb. It's, I get why people watch it, guys. I'm only kidding. I get why you watch it, because it makes you feel good. And it's
they're great, heartwarming movies, and quick.
And the girl moves to the small town, and then the guy's there, and he owns a bakery. And
it's actually really funny, because I'm going to do a shout out Woodstock in this episode. I was intending on doing it to Annie Kruger. Annie Kruger is a local. She's our age. She's probably younger than me. She's one of those sick photogenic people, like insanely photogenic. Like, you can't get a bad angle. Like, you look at her stuff online, because what I'm getting at is that she starred in a Hallmark Christmas movie called A Taste of Christmas. So please, if you listen to this podcast, watch that movie for Annie. She was one of our COVID busters. So she helped out, especially at the beginning, those early days, those big clinics. She was there with us, helping out her community and protecting her family. And,
that's awesome.
So
we should watch her Hallmark movie, and then none of the other ones.
And any other time she's in a Hallmark movie.
And I'm going to totally contradict what I just said. So that's kind of what I do. The other piece of that is, if it makes you happy and you feel better doing it, don't let me or anyone take that away from you. So,
of course.
So I'm telling you, I think they're garbage and they're not for me. But if it brings you joy, like, if you got to put up your tree 10 months ahead of time.
Oh, my sister-in-law puts it up in November.
Listen, whatever you got to do, guys, we are all going to be dead. And so that is going to be a thing that's going to happen. And I don't want to waste any of my time on this planet worried about how other people feel about me. So if you heard what I said about the Hallmark thing and you got mad, that's fine. But it's just a stupid opinion I have. At the end of the day, I want everybody to do the thing that brings you joy. That's important because you're not going to be here forever. And so find the things that make you happy. And if you can squeeze the smallest amount of excitement and happiness out of a dumbass movie like a Hallmark movie, and that makes you feel good, then go at it, man. Have at it.
Yeah, we're no one to judge.
Absolutely, but I will judge. Garbage. I will judge, and I watch garbage. Like I watch terrible stuff all the time. But
yeah, if the older generation that listens to this podcast knew what Aqua Teen Hunger Force was,
oh my God,
they would never listen to me again.
Not one time.
And you know what the other thing is? Like most people, if they knew what pharmacists were like in college, would probably never go to pharmacies either.
Not a chance.
No. So let's move on to the next topic. I love talking about things unrelated to wellness, sort of, but let's talk about celebrating safely. So in the Turkey Day episode, we had predicted a COVID surge around this time, right, due to the new variants. It didn't really pan out. I mean, the new variants are here and COVID's kind of everywhere, but really what's going on is like what they're calling like this Tridemic, where you have COVID, RSV, and flu all circulating at the same time.
And I can try them all.
And you literally will try them
all. Oh, fun!
Because it's been so long since most people have been exposed to these viruses that we're getting sick. So one of the things I want to do is to actually debunk this idea that our immune systems are weaker because of the COVID precautions we took. And that's why everybody's getting sick. And that's why the hospitals are filling up right now. And that is not true. It's taking something that's kind of true and then turning into something that's not and exaggerating it. So the concept that because we wore masks, our immune systems are weaker, that's not what happened. Our immune systems, as we said, can be suboptimal. They can be weak if you have a disease or you take a medicine that can make your immune system weaker. And then if that happens, you're not going to be exposed to colds. You're going to be exposed to really, really mean things like,
polio.
Yeah. No, there's like some really bad infections that like most of us just kind of flick off that patients with like cancer and HIV have to deal with on a regular basis. So like you get really, really sick if you have a weak immune system. So what is happening here is that, the question really I ask back is like, well, how do we get sick? Well, we get sick if we get exposed to a version of a virus that we haven't been exposed to before or don't already have protection for, right, from like a vaccine. And so what happened was we had a period of time where the viruses were not circulating because we were doing infection control measures as a group. Even if we really weren't, we were. There was countries in the southern hemisphere where flu starts that were wearing masks 100% of the time, that were locked down 100% of the time. So there was not very much circulation going, right, of these viruses and these bacteria. So now you have a population of people that have not been exposed to these things that are now all of a sudden getting exposed to them. And then the second kind of part to that is there is, normally how infections kind of move through a population, it's kind of a rolling thing. It's not kind of all at once. A new version of a virus hits a crowd of people and some people have natural immunity and some people have already been exposed to something similar enough so it doesn't really move to them. But then it infects somebody and then it kind of moves through the schools kind of slowly one at a time. And because so many of us, so much of the time of the past couple of years, we're doing the right thing, a lot of us haven't been exposed to these versions. And now it's like the virus is like going to an American buffet, right? It's like all you can eat and it is going crazy, just kind of gobbling everything up. So we are experiencing this interesting like fusion of three viruses, not because our immune systems are weak, but because the versions of the viruses and such haven't been seen in a little bit.
And it's because we wore masks. So right. It's really true. We at a macro level attacked a virus in a way that we've never done as a society.
Yeah.
In modern history. It's unprecedented what we did. The ripple effects of that are this. And so that's not saying that what we did was wrong or dumb. Yep. We saved lives. People didn't die from COVID on the front end because we took these measures. That being said, a bunch of people are going to get sick from viruses because they couldn't circulate.
Right, or because they weren't exposed to them.
Yeah.
And so it's all happening at once. We're going to get caught up. Basically, this next season or two, like fall and spring season, are going to be a little bit rougher, and we were all expecting this. Like, this is something that we kind of knew was going to happen. And once, again, people have been exposed to these versions of the viruses, and then they start to kind of spread out, then it'll slow down, and it won't be newsworthy anymore. It'll still be happening, and that's, the third piece to this is that it's happening all at once, and it's happening as a result of the precautions we took. So it's clickable, right? And it's something that people are talking about. One of the biggest things I heard during the pandemic is you never hear about flu anymore. You never hear about pneumonia anymore. And I'm like, you don't. I still do. I still get the weekly emails talking about how flu is still spreading and where it's hitting and all of that. And yeah, we certainly saw that it was a weaker flu, but we knew that it was going around. So it's just that the news, your media source, wasn't talking about that because they were just talking about COVID all the time because everybody was paying attention to it, you know?
And what I don't want to hear from folks in the comment section or in life is that we shouldn't have taken the precautions that we took for COVID because it was going to do what these other flus and other flu and sicknesses do, the other colds do, right? COVID's a cold, so we just got to let it run its course, and we got to get everybody immune by just letting them all catch it.
Yeah.
That's nonsense science, guys.
Yeah.
And so I get why you're saying that, because based on what Neal just said, that might seem like a logical place for you to take this discussion, but don't.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Yeah, I think that there was so many, bad things. And that kind of gets to this next point. So, we want you to be safe around the holidays. We want you to gather. I've been a proponent of living alongside COVID for almost all of the pandemic. I told you to stay home because we had no idea what we were dealing with. Then we learned that masks were very helpful. That was great. We could stop washing our vegetables. And, and then we had the vaccines. And once that happened, I said, okay, now it's game time. We can live alongside this. We just have to know what to do. So we want you to be safe. And there's this really weird dancey thing that we all do because this is COVID, right? It brings a lot to the table with it. So then it changes the whole conversation and the way that we can talk about this. I said I was on actually this radio station where we record our podcast. They had me on, and I thought on the way there, like, how am I going to talk about COVID without getting hate mail? Right? Which is insane because, let's go back to the Thanksgiving episode. Mark, you said you're done with COVID, right?
Yes.
And so I would have hoped that, if you weren't feeling right on Thanksgiving, you would have been like, I'm probably going to stay home, right? Because I've got symptoms. You at least would have kicked it around your head. What's the real risk of what I'm doing here? I know you would have tested. You would have done the right things because you said you were done with COVID, and it was funny and it was true,
right?
But you still are going to be responsible.
Yeah,
right?
and there's ways to be done with COVID from the I'm traumatized by COVID aspect, and so we've all been collectively fed the hell up, and that's why I was saying it the way that I was, because it's okay to be pissed off at COVID and feel like it robbed us, because it did.
Right.
We lost a lot, not just people. We lost a lot during COVID. That was missed opportunities in my daughter's life, little things that I notice about her social skills or her ability to understand things, little stuff like going to a store and buying stuff. She's like, this is amazing. Because for parts of her life, she couldn't go to a store and buy stuff. And so a thing that I take for granted of growing up in the 80s and everybody smoking cigarettes indoors and we're all doing whatever. We don't live in that time. Right. And so I can be mad about COVID being just a terrible thing, and still protect myself and my family and the people I care about. I can do both things.
Yeah. And so that kind of brings up an important point about the kids, because RSV is really affecting children. There are kids that are 2 years old that didn't get exposed to RSV from birth to first year, from first year to second year, right? And they would have gotten exposed, potentially developed some sort of immunity or gotten sick from it, and it would have been much less dramatic. So we have the people that would normally get sick every year, plus the 2 years of kids that have not gotten exposed to it. That's why it kind of bubbles up to the top. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make with the thing about what you were saying is the next thing that, for me, I've missed 4 out of the last 12 Christmases due to stomach bugs. Because, norovirus normally is circulating at this time, because that also happens. And so inevitably one of the Smoller kids would get a stomach bug 5 days before. That means that in 5 days, everybody's going to have it. So we're going to watch Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, and that's what we're going to do for Christmas. And so, I can say to someone, if your kid is throwing up, you should probably not go to Christmas dinner. And people go, yeah, that's pretty reasonable, right? But we don't do that with COVID, and we're not going to do it with flu or RSV. And it's a weird thing to me because, again, at the end of the day, a lot of people are adding baggage to us and have been since the beginning. And I have been trying to say it's an infectious disease. It doesn't care if you're tired of it, And so this is a medical thing. This is a wellness thing, right? So we're allowing COVID to carry all this extra baggage, and we should be able to just kind of talk about it, right?
And we can't. And the reason we can't is a systemic failure, not just of the healthcare system, but the political system. Because the second a elected official got on TV and started talking to us about COVID, we lost. Because the way in which we're supposed to do emergency management is scientists at the front. You got to have a scientist standing in front of you telling you the science. The second an elected official stands in front of you and starts talking to you about the thing that's scientific, you're immediately going, well, that's the D's or the R's. And you're not going to, this is a scientific fact in reality. And so this thing was politicized from the gate.
Right.
And when we do that, now we're back into our trenches and our two camps and our nonsense.
Is this a holiday episode?
Yes. Ho, 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 brother.
Jesus Christ.
But this is
We're
the
going
stuff.
heavy.
But this is the stuff, guys, and it's honest, right? This is what happened. And so we got to go back and look at it and go, how are we so screwed up by this?
Right.
Because we've allowed it to fall into that same set of algorithms that are killing us as a people. And so if I have one wish this holiday season, and Neal has posted about it on his Facebook, he's ranted about it left and right. We talk about it when we get together in person. This tribalism nonsense, this thinking that I'm different than other people and that they're bad and I'm good, or I'm good and they're bad, is a wasted effort. We're people and we make mistakes and we got our ideas, and most of them are fed to us through an algorithm, and not because we're unique thinkers who can think outside the box and put things together on our own. We're being forced an agenda. And if you don't know that, or you don't realize that, I'm really sorry, but it's true. And so what we want to do is separate out the nonsense and the feelings that you have about COVID, which is why I said, like, I'm fed up, Neal. I can't do COVID anymore because I'm tired of COVID, man. I'm sick of it. I effing hate COVID, right?
Yeah.
We all should hate COVID.
It's an infection. It's an infection. And so it, just like your kid throwing up, if you have the signs or symptoms, you should be having that same thought process. Maybe I shouldn't go to Christmas if my kid is throwing up, if my kid has a scratchy throat, because that's it. It doesn't have to mean anything beyond that, right? And you miss one, right? And I understand that we miss our friends and our family, but I don't want to hear like, oh, we got together with dinner. Yeah, he had a sore throat, but he didn't think it was a cough or cold, right? So that I'm just trying to keep it real on that front, right? So,
and things aren't preventative if we don't prevent them. That's the catchphrase for today.
So there's stuff that you can do to get together and be safe. So one, listen to our episode about boosting your immune system. Like, that was a great episode. It puts into place all the wellness practices to ensure that your immune system is not suboptimal. And that's the best that we can do. And then two, get to their freaking vaccines, man, right? So get your boosters, get your flu shots, because that will stop the spread. That's what happens, right? So if you want to opt out of these vaccines, because you're an adult and you decide it's not for you, I'm all for it, right? But don't say it's because you're holistic, or, you can't be holistic and support vaccines.
My body's going to take care of it on its own. My body knows how to fight stuff. My body is a wonderland.
I'm not okay with it. I'm happy to chat with folks about it. At this point, I think it's been done ad nauseum, but like, I just think that it's smart to do the things that will actually protect you and protect others, right? And so then there's this idea of the free test. Something I talked about on the podcast previously is like, you can get free tests. These things used to be $150 for what you get from your insurance right now for $0, and take them. And just to remind you that a single test is just a snapshot in time. It's a flash in the pan. You can't really just take a test the day of Thanksgiving and be like, I'm okay. If you have your boosters, and if you've surveilled yourself, done a couple tests the week leading up to it, you can tell a better story and kind of have a good idea of what your risks actually are of having COVID. And if you test the next day or 2 days after, that's the best that you can possibly do. So what I'm trying to say is, like, I just want you to try. I don't want you to go to Christmas dinner and not wash your hands. Right? I don't want that to happen. You shouldn't be at Hanukkah and like have dirty surfaces that everybody's touching, because RSV and like all of this stuff is spread this way, right?
Share your dreidel, but wash your hands in between the spins.
That's right. Use the alcohol in between spins. And so RSV is the one that I really want people to be aware of, because a lot of us are older, and we might be getting around the grandkids. It's a real pain this year, because we have a generation, not a generation, but a group of kids that haven't been exposed to it yet, right? And so, if the kids are under a year, you really have to think about is it smart for me to come to a Christmas gathering this year? And in our family, like, we're recording this the night before Thanksgiving. We have family that have opted out of and it's a bummer, man. And it stinks, but like, that's smart. They have like a 3-month-old to bring them around my kids that are 12. And we were like, even like, we'll stay home if you want to come. And they're like, it's a risk no matter what, So be responsible, keep your head counts low if you have those people come to your house, and don't have symptomatic people around you. It's so hard to differentiate between all these different diseases right now. So to be safe, to celebrate safely, let's keep it real. These things are infections. Get rid of the baggage and just do the things that we know, and just, be responsible, right? Just be responsible for the sake of everybody else, right?
And you might be thinking, so we made this mistake by putting masks on and keeping kids away from RSV because now it's attacking these kids who are younger, and COVID really didn't do a lot to harm young children. So you could draw a pretty straight line to say this RSV problem that we have now is an uptick. We would have RSV problems anyway. It's a thing that exists regardless. But we have a bigger issue because we protected ourselves in a macro way from this COVID disease. Now, if you had gotten COVID with these children and then those children gave COVID to your old people who are dead, that's what we were trying to avoid.
Right.
So kids can fight off RSV, and they will, but we have to be mindful of it. We want them to not suffer. We want them to be okay, but don't draw that fallacious reasoning into this discussion, because if you do that, Neal and I are going to physically fight.
We're going to get upset.
Yeah.
We just want you to be safe. So let's bring it back up. You have one last thing you want to say, something about the environment. I don't know what the heck you were saying.
Here's the thing, Neal.
Is this another mushy gratitude?
Yes, Neal.
Rant?
Yes. Because, here's the thing, Neal. I said it earlier, we get this one life here, guys. And so if you're not enjoying the people that are around you and the life that you've built here, regardless of your wellness practice, you're missing the boat. We aren't going to be able to come out of this thing alive. So spend the time now with those savoring skills. We do not savor the moments in the ways that we should. And we look back with nostalgia on things that have already happened and go, wow, those were the best times. It's like Andy Bernard from The Office. Like, I wish there was a way to know when we were in the good times. We're here now, guys.
Yeah.
If you treat now like the good times and appreciate the moments that we have, and the people that are in your lives. Like, I appreciate Neal. I'm grateful for Neal. He's a pain in my butt, and he's always making me do these podcasts, but I'm grateful that we've had this opportunity. And so I could see it as a stressful thing, and I got to be funny all the time I'm on here, and I'm so hilarious, and it's hard to be hilarious all the time. That's not the point. The point is I get to hang out with my buddy Neal and bring you guys some interesting content. And so that's awesome. That's an awesome thing that we get to do. And so I could look at it as a burden. It's a pain in my butt to drive an hour, and it's annoying. Or I could take a perspective that I can actually help some people. There's people listening to this who have shared with me that they've appreciated what we're doing here. That makes it worth it. But even if nobody listened to this thing, I get to hang with my buddy Neal.
Right.
I got a wife and kid who love me and care about me. I got a warm home.
You had all those girlfriends from
I've got all those girlfriends from when I was a kid. The thing is, I don't want us getting stuck on the things that don't work in our lives.
Yeah.
And that's why we're really focusing on what are the things you got going. You're so quick to look at your deficits. Where are you doing well?
Yeah.
What do you have in your life to be thankful for? What do you have that's going right for you? You're going to have 70 things happen in a day that go awesome. The one thing goes wrong and you lose your mind. And we want to break up that thinking. It's what that roommate in our head's doing to us. And so there's an impact on that. And that's what I'm trying to say let's appreciate each other, especially this time of year. Let's not see it as a burden. Let's see it as the joy that it is.
It's a great bookend to how we started the holiday episodes, where we drew the wellness connection. The holiday season isn't about planning and list making. It's about stress. It's about anxiety. That's what the theme of wellness is across this country. And that's insane. That is not a healthy thing. So to have these practices really kind of gets you back to the point. To watch a Christmas movie and get teary-eyed and sappy about that, whether it's a Hallmark one or otherwise. That's the goal, folks.
Put your phone down, snuggle your loved ones on a couch, get a giant blanket and some pillows, and watch a holiday movie and laugh and enjoy each other. That's what this life is. And 20 years from now, that's what you're going to be thinking about. Not that we had a podcast, not that Neal told you that COVID was going to kill you and you wore a mask and now everybody's got RSV. This is all just topical stuff. life is these moments, and that's the stuff that we want you to hold on to and really enjoy and appreciate as it's happening.
And we're going to go have some moments right now. Mark and I are going to go to a restaurant and hang out with some old friends.
We sure are.
This episode has been fun. Have a great holiday season, everybody. There are so many holidays happening right now. If you celebrate one or if you celebrate all of them, just do it. Celebrate it. Have fun. Say hi to everybody. Make sure you test.
and we're grateful for all of you. So the fact that we've made it through this year and this podcast still exists and we're still doing this thing and you guys are still listening, tuning in, buying the merch, giving us the subscriptions and the likes and the stars and the things. Thank you. We have not said enough. Thank you all for being a part of this with us. We look forward to where this is headed. We look forward to where we're going to take this thing. And we couldn't do it if you guys weren't here with us. So thank you all.
That does it for this week's podcast episode. Visit wellnessupsidedown.com for all things podcast. And remember, being our healthiest starts with being honest about ourselves and the health and wellness industry. And then blazing a new path, marching forward one step at a time. I'm Dr. Neal Smoller from DeCicco, and we've got your back. Thanks for joining us.
Our bodies metabolize food, which is what we want to really talk about. There's the vitamins and then there's the food, right?
Right.
The food is where we need to get this from because that's what the body's looking to pull this in. So it's not, one little circular vitamin isn't going to do what the vast amount of food that you need to put in your body in a day can bring to the table.